Amateur Radio News and Notes for Friday, July 31st, 2026. I'm Ed Kabik, November 2, Echo Charlie. In the log this week, we've got a contest spotlight for the North American QSO Party on CW happening this weekend. Also, an investigation is underway regarding alleged WRTC pirate DX stations. There's a study that suggests that future solar cycle activity may be able to be forecast from previous cycle data. Also, Amateur Radio News and Notes will be on summer break next week. We'll also talk about MVARC Nets on the air, see what's happening with DX, get a solar activity update, talk about upcoming contests, and take a look at interesting online radio content. As always, the links to all the reference content can be found in our show notes and also on our Substack at mvarc.substack.com. This weekend brings the latest edition of the North American QSO Party to the air, this time on CW. The goal of this contest is to work as many North American stations as possible during the contest. It runs from 1800 UTC on Saturday, August 1st, that's 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, until 5:59 UTC on Sunday, August 2nd, that's 1:59 a.m. on Sunday. For the purpose of the contest, North American stations are defined by the ARRL DXCC list plus Hawaii. The exchange is a simple one. Operator name and location, state, province, or country. So for me in Virginia, my exchange would be Ed, VA. For non-North American stations, the exchange is just their name. Operating categories include single operator with no spotting assistance permitted, single operator assisted with spotting assistance permitted, and multi-operator 2 transmitter. Power is limited to 100 watts for the low power category and 5 watts and under for QRP. Allowed bands include 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters. Multipliers are all 50 U.S. states and D.C. and the 13 Canadian provinces and territories and other North American DXCC entities. Non-North American entities don't count as a multiplier, but do count for QSO credit. The score is the number of valid QSOs multiplied by the sum of multipliers worked on each band. There's also a team competition that allows you to have your score added to a cumulative team score. Logs are due no later than 7 days after the end of the contest, and electronic submission via Cabrillo format is preferred. For more information, check out the contest rules at ncjweb.com/naqp-rules.pdf. Good luck. The World Radiosport Team Championships took place on July 11th and 12th this year to much fanfare. The competition seeks to create a fair and balanced contest between its participants. However, there have been some allegations that pirate call signs were on the air during the event, providing rare multipliers to certain teams in a way that may have impacted the outcome of the competition. Since the logs of WRTC are public, individuals did independent analysis of the contacts and found potential cause for concern. Alex, LZ4AX, highlighted 10 call signs that came from DX stations who did not submit logs to the contest and only worked a subset of their WRTC teams. Then Tim N3QE did his own analysis, which seemed to show that those call signs were working sequentially in a way that a single person could be behind these rare multipliers instead of being legitimate. Kevin, W1DED, has an in-depth article that goes into the analysis and the underlying data at his Substack that is definitely worth the read. The link is in the show notes. Shortly after his publication, the WRTC 2026 Organizing Committee released a statement that an emergency meeting had been called and that further analysis would be undertaken. To be clear, the current data does not appear to indicate any wrongdoing by the contestants, but rather that there may have been a pirate external to the competition, falsely using DX call signs for the benefit of a subset of participants. The organizing committee has said that, quote, once they have a final outcome, it will be passed to the sanctioning committee for endorsement prior to public announcement. The full statement and official results can be found at WRTC2026.org. A study presented by the Royal Astronomical Society by researchers at the University of Warwick seems to have identified a new forecast technique to provide insight into the strength of the next solar cycle many years before it begins. The solar cycle lasts for 11 years and goes from a minimum of sunspots to a maximum and then back down to a minimum again. In the study, they reference a moment in the cycle when extreme solar activity, quote, suddenly disappears, and they call that a switch-off point. Taking an inventory of sunspots at that point appears to be correlated with a maximum number of sunspots in the next cycle. If the conclusions of the study hold true, it could provide better forecasts of future cycles well ahead of previous methods. A link to the full story can be found in the show notes. Amateur radio news and notes will be on a summer break next week, so there will not be an episode of the podcast or an edition of the newsletter. We'll be back, tanned, rested, and ready in 2 weeks. In the meantime, we'll give you a double helping of DX and contest news in this edition to keep you up to date while we're away. And now let's take a look at some MVARC Nets on the air. We have our 2-meter FM net on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on the repeater that is immediately followed by the 2-meter digital net on Yaesu System Fusion C4 FM on the same frequency. On the weekends, we've got the MVARC Slow Speed CW Roundtable Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 a.m. on 3.565 MHz CW, and that is followed by the MVARC Cherry Tree net on Saturday and Sunday at 8:30 a.m. at 3.920 MHz lower sideband, where we always have a great conversation, and you're always welcome to join us. And now let's take a look at what is happening with DX. There will be a lot of DX on the air in the next 2 weeks. Stations on the air include Benin, South Cook Island, Azerbaijan, Trinidad and Tobago, Easter Island, Bahamas, Island, Aruba, El Salvador, and Tajikistan. A calendar of DX expeditions can be found at NG3K's announced DX operations list at ng3k.com. And now it's time for a solar activity update. As we go to press, the Solar Flux Index, or SFI, was 152, and the estimated sunspot number was 130, with 9 numbered sunspot regions visible from Earth. Over the last week, the SFI has increased. Solar activity has been at low levels in the last 24 hours. The geomagnetic field has been at quiet to unsettled levels in the last 24 hours, and the KP index reached 2 yesterday. The solar wind peaked at 401 kilometers a second. Solar activity is predicted to be at low levels with a slight chance of M-class flares today through Sunday. The geomagnetic field is forecast to be at quiet to active levels today through Sunday. The chance of solar radiation storms at the S1 or greater level is at 1% today through Sunday. R1 to R2 radio blackouts are possible, with a predicted probability of 25% today through Sunday. R3 or greater blackouts are unlikely, with a 1% chance predicted today through Sunday. It remains a fantastic time for amateurs to get on the air and work the world. Good sources of real-time solar information include spaceweatherlive.com and solarham.com. A good overview of conditions can be found at dx.qsl.net/propagation. To see D-layer absorption data and associated radio blackouts, visit the NOAA DRAP page. And to see real-time maximum useful frequency, or MUF, and critical frequency, or FOF2 information from RadioSonde data, visit prop.kc2g.com. And now let's take a look at some upcoming contests. This weekend brings the North American QSO Party on CW we spotlighted earlier. Also on the air this weekend will be the 1010 International Summer Contest on single sideband, the European HF Championship, the ARRL 222 MHz and up distance contest, and the SARL HF phone contest. Next weekend brings the WAE DX contest on CW, the ARRL EME contest, the SKCC Weekend Sprintathon, the YB Bikasi Merdeka contest, the Maryland DC QSO Party, Kentucky State Parks on the air, the SARL HF Digital contest, and the 4 states QRP Second Sunday Sprint. As always, the K1USN SSTs, the MSTs, and the CWTs will also be on the air. The full contest calendar with events and exchanges can be found at contestcalendar.com. And now it's time to take a look at some interesting online radio content. As always, the links to everything we're about to discuss are in the show notes and also at our Substack at mvarc.substack.com. A study shows a link between solar weather and terrestrial weather in Colorado. The Everyday Ham podcast talks to Sebastian KI2D about what's coming soon to Ham 2K portable logger. George VK2AOE fixes some blown FETs and has some fun with his homebrew amplifier. Walt K4OGO revisits the V-dipole and sings its praises. Michael KB9VBR takes a look at the newly improved Heil BM17 headset. Charlie N0CVL uses a 40-meter dipole in his HOA to get reduced noise and increased performance. Pia DL7PIA does POTA and worldwide flora and fauna on the Baltic Sea. Mike K8MRD takes a look at a 3D printed trailer hitch mount for portable masts. Chris N8PEM builds his own Morse key base for a Bonnell double speed key. Walt K4OGO looks at a prototype everything transformer with 49:1, 9:1, 4:1, and 1:1 matching networks. Josh KI6NAZ tests out the N6ARA tiny filter for 2 meters. Mike K&MRD takes a look at the tiny filter from N6ARA as well. Alan W2AEW shows how to use a VNA to tune a duplexer. Manuel DL2MAN talks about his complete rewrite to the True SDX firmware. Callum M0MCX talks about chokes and ugly balance. Alan W2AEW analyzes cascading common emitter amplifiers using an emitter follower. Mike K&MRD works to mitigate RFI from an inverter. And Dr. Tamithasco, WX6SWW, takes a look at some space weather from last week. Well, that is it for this week. I've been Ed, November 2, Echo Charlie. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We hope you have a great 2 weeks ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.